live. Welcome to another episode of the Bookwanderers Club, people who are joining us live and also people who are watching it back. I am thrilled to have with me, after many requests from several people, to have Michelle Harrison with me, and we are going to talk about, I'm just muting my YouTube, there we go. Michelle has written, I think it's 8 books. There's 8 books published.
Yeah, and 2 reading books with Rising Stars, but yeah, 8 novels so far.
And we're going to talk particularly about Michelle's most recent books, A Pinch of Magic and A Sprinkle of Sorcery, although we might get on to things that are upcoming. But just whilst everyone is getting online and getting settled, Michelle is going to do a reading from A Pinch of Magic, the first book in the Widdershins trilogy. So I'm going to pass you over to Michelle.
Okay, so this is from chapter 1, called Trick or Treat. Betty Widdershins first learned of the family curse on the night of her birthday. It was her 13th, a number considered unlucky by some, but Betty was too practical to believe in all that. She liked to think she was too practical to believe in most superstitious nonsense, despite having grown up surrounded by it. It was a Saturday, always a busy night in Betty's home, which was the village inn. The Poacher's Pocket was the rowdiest place on the Isle of Crowstone and had been in the Widdershins family for generations. It now belonged to her granny, also named Betty, but whom everyone called Bunny to avoid confusion. They lived there with Betty's sisters, Felicity, known as Fliss, who was the eldest, and 6-year-old Charlotte, who would only answer to Charlie. Betty's birthday also happened to fall on Halloween. As she and Charlie galloped downstairs, their trick-or-treat costumes billowed behind them in a satisfying, villainous way. In fact, the outfit was helping Betty to feel rather daring, which she was glad of, as she and Charlie were about to break Granny's biggest rule, only Charlie didn't know it yet. That's the first one, A Pinch of Magic.
Amazing, thank you. So I guess I'm going to ask the same question that I always ask, just because I think it's interesting. It's such a cliche question, like, where did the idea come from? But I genuinely find it fascinating knowing where other authors get their ideas from. And so was it the sisters? Was it the setting? Kind of where did the kind of seed of the series grow from?
It actually came from another book. So I was contracted to write something like a 9 to 12, so I knew I needed an idea. And I was flicking through a book for inspiration called The Law of the Land, which has got lots of folklore from all over Britain. And 2 words jumped out at me, which was Essex and witches. So being from Essex, I thought, right, I need to know what that is, and had a look. And it's a village called Canewdon, which is only about 40 minutes from where I live, but I've never heard of it before. And the story goes that there will always be 6 witches in the village, and whenever one of them dies, a stone falls out of the church walls. And I just really instantly loved that story. So originally, A Pinch of Magic was going to be all about Betty finding out that she was a witch on her 13th birthday, and kind of going away to like a remote island and going to a bit of a witch school, I guess. So I wrote the first 3 chapters and an outline based on that concept. And then my publisher called me in for a meeting, which I kind of knew wasn't a good sign, because normally they'll just say, yeah, we like it, carry on. So they called me in and they said, oh, we really like aspects of what you've done. We love the idea of the stones falling out of the wall to signify a death coming. But can you write something that's not about witches, because we've got a lot of witchy books coming up in the next year or so. So I was a bit stumped and thinking, oh my God, what am I going to write? And then I kind of had a bit of a think and went away and said, oh, what about a family curse? We can still keep the stones coming out of the walls. And they said, yeah, great, family curse. So that was how it all began, really. And obviously, as soon as I decided it was a family curse, I needed to give Betty a family.
Yeah.
So being a sister, one of 3 sisters myself, I thought, oh, I'll just give her 2 sisters because I know what to do with that.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how it all began, really.
Amazing. And the three sisters are very much the kind of heart of the book. So I was hoping that you could tell us a bit about the three sisters and who they are.
Okay, so Betty's the middle sister, and again, they're very much based on me and my sisters. So I'm the youngest, so I am a bit of a fan of all things fluffy. We're all quite fond of our tummies, and you know, we're a bit of a foodie family, and we always want to get together, and it usually just involves eating. So Charlie is quite greedy, but I think that's a bit of all of us. Betty's the middle one. She's practical and the one that everyone kind of expects to solve their problems, and that's a lot like my sister Janet, who's the middle sister. We call her practically perfect, or Mary Poppins, because she's always got the solutions for things. And my eldest sister Teresa was the inspiration for Fliss, because she likes everything to be so pretty, and she's kind of the emotional one that always wants to look on the bright side and kind of wants to see the good in people. So yeah, it was quite easy really just to kind of steal my sister's personalities. And obviously, you know, put some fictional stuff in there as well. Yeah, that was the basis for the sisters. But I wasn't expecting so many people to react the way that they have to them. Yeah, they've kind of become stronger as the books have gone on, I think, because it's clearly something that people enjoy and it's important to them, this sisterhood and this relationship.
Yeah, it was one of the things that I really loved. I'm one of two sisters, and we're super close, and I love books about sisters. It's one of the things that just, yeah, and it's just, I love their relationship. How do your real life sisters feel about being borrowed for your books? Have they read the books?
Yeah, they were the first to read them, really. I mean, they used to read them before they were published, but now they just wait for the finished books because they know how many things change during the edits. But yeah, Teresa, when she read Pinch of Magic, she said, "I think that's your best one yet." And I said, "Oh, you're just saying that." So I said, "No, I really, really mean it. I think it's really good." But I think maybe it was because she could see a bit of herself in there. I don't know. But I mean, they're fine with it. They're always happy to kind of bounce ideas, or let me bounce ideas off of them. If I say, "Oh, I need a name for a rat," or "I need a name for a pup," and they're always quite happy to contribute.
Yeah.
I never really asked them, to be honest. If they minded, I just did it. So that's what I do, I think.
What sisters for? There's a character in my next book named after my sister, but that's at her request.
Is it a nice character though?
Pardon?
Is it a nice character though?
Well, we had a whole debate about this because she was like, "Can you name a character after me?" And I was like, it's like a poison chalice, because you'll then think that everything that character does is a comment on how I feel about you. And like characters in books, you know, they have to, you know, if the character, even if it's a good cat, like a goodie, they'll have to do things that are like annoying or bad, and you'll think that I'm saying something about you that I'm not. So then her name is Hester, which is a great name. So she was like, "Well, how about a beloved family pet?" was her request. So I have written into book 3 family pet, just so I can call it Hester. So it's an animal. So I think that I hopefully can't offend her too much by having an animal named after her.
This is why I will never do competitions to name a character, or like auction off a character name, because it would stress me out so much about what people would think and if they'd take it personally. I've already stolen a name from a teacher that came to a signing of mine in February, and it was just such a great name. I had to use it, but it's going to be a baddie, and I don't think she's going to mind at all, because I kind of said that to her at the time. I'm already slightly stressing about it, about whether she's going to kind of think, "Oh, actually, I wish she hadn't done that," but it's just such a good name really to use it.
No, sometimes you have to, you know, these things are serendipitously presented and you have to run with it. You've relatively recently announced the name of the 3rd book in the series. So kind of a two-parter question. Firstly, can you tell us anything about that book? It's hard with series to spoil, to try to do as few spoilers as possible. Can you tell us anything about the third book? And then sort of the other branch of that question is, did you know kind of where you were headed with the 3 books from the beginning, or has it kind of developed as you've written them?
Okay, so the third book, which is called A Tangle of Spells, which took us ages to come up with that title, because we were just coming up with all those different recipes and a fricassee of this, and you know, it took a while to get there, but we got there in the end. So that's it's a little bit scary actually, because it's a departure from Crowstone for the Widdershins. They're going to be moving away. And going to pastures new, so that's a little bit scary, and I've been kind of working on the settings for that, but it's something I'm really enjoying, because I do love writing about settings and putting interesting landmarks in, and I will give you a little sneaky peek of it. It's, well, not a peek, but like a little snippet. So the place that they moved to is called Pendlewick, which I think sounds suitably fairy tale-ish and witchy, which should give you an idea of what it's going to be like. But it's a place where magic isn't really spoken about because of things that have happened in the past, and so there's sort of a bit of a ban on even talking about it, and like a sort of a village that's erased certain things from their history. And of course the Widdershins are about to unearth it all, with the discovery of a secret room in their cottage that they move into. So yeah, there's like an enchanted painting, and yeah, just like a thread of kind of witchcraft and magic going through this village that people want covered up, and these girls just arrive and kind of stir it all up. So but yeah, I'm only on chapter 4 at the moment, so it's all kind of all very new, and I'm feeling my way through. And the second part of the question, no, I didn't really, I mean, I didn't know what was going to happen with Pinch of Magic. I wrote it so that it could be a standalone, which I think you can read it as a standalone. And then at the end, I didn't want to let the characters go, and luckily my publisher agreed. They'd actually already asked me if I wanted to write another book in Crowstone, but with different characters. So I did an outline for them, and they actually weren't that keen. They thought it was too dark, which looking back at it now, it wasn't. Sisters, and they said, yeah, you know what, I think that's a good idea. So yeah, I'm just winging it really, just making up the stories, but I think that's quite a nice thing, because it means that I can make each one a standalone as much as possible, which is something that I always liked as a kid with character books. Each one, you know, Famous 5, it was just a complete adventure in itself. Yeah.
Fab. Right, I'm aware that I've got loads of questions coming in. I just wanted to ask you one more question, because you sort of touched on the settings of the books, and this is something that actually I had via Sally asked me to ask you this via Instagram as well. It's just that the settings of the books are kind of they're so part of the book, and you have a map at the beginning. Where is the place based on? Anywhere that you've been in real life?
There's always little bits and pieces of places. So I got the name Crowstone from a street name, which is about 10 minutes from where I live. And it's the name of the road. Crowstone Road is where I park my car when I go to the library. And my mum lived there actually about, I don't know, 30 years ago or something, in a little bungalow. Yeah. And yeah, Hangman's Wood in the 13 Treasures, again, that's a place that's only about 10-15 minutes away. So I tend to kind of use a lot of real life place names. And the islands are sort of based on, there's a couple of islands in Essex called Osea Island and Mersey Island, which are over Malden way. And Osea Island is quite well known, because it was where The Woman in Black was filmed, with the causeway that goes up to the house, and it gets cut off by the tide. So yeah, a little bit of trivia there for you. And yeah, it's kind of based on those sorts of islands, like these are all kind of estuary islands with lots of eels, and you know, where people eat you know, cockles and things like that I wouldn't touch, for you know, lots of people love them. My mum used to love them.
Amazing. Right. I think that now is a good moment to get a taster of a sprinkle of sorcery if we're ready to do your reading from that.
Right, so it's Pink Sprinkle Sorcery. So this one is a little bit of a different reading because I'm going to read from the prologue, and you'll see that it's the start of a different kind of story. So in both of these books there's a story within a story. So I'll just shut up and read it. Okay. There was once a powerful witch who lived on the edge of a marsh. She lived alone except for her familiar, a large black raven. Every day people would come to her seeking help, and every day the witch would assist them in return for some small token or favour. Her magic could cure many things, from warts to worries, from broken fingers to broken hearts. One day she had a visitor, the lord of the land, who had come in disguise. He was a cruel man who had heard stories of the witch's magic, and he couldn't bear to think that anyone was wealthier or more powerful than him. While he was quickly satisfied that the witch was far from rich, he unexpectedly began to fall in love with her. But the witch did not return his feelings, even when he threw off his disguise and revealed who he truly was. Unable to forget her, the Lord returned to visit her again. He couldn't understand why the witch did not love him back, and he flew into a rage and ordered for her to be blinded. If you will not look at me and love me, then you will not look at anyone, he declared. But the Lord's men took pity on the witch and left her with one good eye. You can take my eye, she told him, but I will always see you clearly. And she enchanted an old stone with a hole through the middle to act as a magical eye for the one she had lost. When the Lord returned a third time, and the witch's feelings towards him had still not changed, he lost his temper again. This time he demanded that her voice be taken. If you will not say that you love me, he said, then you will not speak at all. And he ordered his men to cut out her tongue and throw it into the marshes. But after the Lord left, the witch's raven croaked in a harsh, rasping voice, you may have taken my tongue, but you will never silence me.
Amazing, thank you.
Right,
I'm going to move straight on to questions that are coming in online because there's lots coming in. I want to make sure I can get through as many as possible. Lots of people saying hello and that they are big fans of your books. And Anna has just bought it yesterday. It's about to start reading a pinch of magic. Mia, who is 10, would like to know if you could have dinner with 5 book characters, who would you choose?
Well, I'm afraid I did a bit of research because I saw this question come up the other day. I had a bit of a think about it. I have a list prepared. I've lost my list. Oh, then I found it. Okay, so firstly, Pickle Witch from the Pickle Witch and Jack books by Claire Barker, because Pickle Witch is just a real hoot. She's this crazy cake-loving witch that, she's just really funny and comes out with all these funny sayings, and she's really mischievous. So I think she'd be really good company. Also Gobelino from Gobelino the Witch's Cat, which I absolutely love magic tricks.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a bit cheeky and say Charlotte Widdershins from my own books, because she's just my favourite character in it, and I think she'd be a laugh, and she'd probably have lots of tricks to show us with Hoppet her rat. Yeah. Also Oswin from Starfell, who this is very animal centered. He's like really grumpy. He looks like a cat. He's a kobold, which is a monster under the stairs. So I'd love to meet him. Meggie or Mo from Inkheart. I would love somebody who could read stories into life, although they might be quite dangerous to have around if you might end up in a story yourself. And that was 5, wasn't it? I actually had 6, so I'll leave it
No, give us your sixth one. Give us your sixth one.
Oh, my last one was another animal. It was Corbett, the raven from Witch for a Week by K.U. Mansky, because he's just really wisecracking and sarcastic and quite amusing. So I think he'd be a good dinner guest.
Yeah. I love that. And I've also just seen that Sophie has asked a sort of similar question, because she was asking about characters from your book. I'm going to ask Sophie, I hope it's okay, just so it's a slightly different question. If you could meet and hang out with one of your own characters, I guess you kind of already picked Charlie, but if you were going to, excluding Charlie, if you could hang out with one of your own characters, who would you choose?
Either Rowan Fox from the 13 Treasures trilogy, because she's pretty tough, and I don't think anyone would mess with you if you were with Rowan, although she does tend to get into trouble, so maybe not. Or Turpin, who's from One Wish, so she's a little fairy companion, but she's quite rude and doesn't bath, and she's got no manners, but I think she'd be really fun to hang around with.
Amazing. Lizzie, who is 10 and watching from Vermont in the US. Thank you, Lizzie, for getting up early to watch this.
Thank you.
Lizzie would like to know what advice you have for people interested in writing. And yeah, Lizzie's 10.
Okay, so the number one thing I think you need to do is to read, which is like the best kind of research, but it's also the best. It's like being an author in training, because I think that's how most writers begin. They begin because they love reading, they love stories, and you'll pick up so much without even realising it. So that's the first thing. And try and read widely, which is something I didn't really do as a child. I didn't have that much in the house. We didn't have lots of books or a lot of access to books, so I've mainly read the same sort of thing. So I'm trying to catch up on that now and widen my reading some more. And practice as well. Start with short stories and try and get into the habit of finishing what you start. I think that's really important, because otherwise you just end up with loads of stories that are just the first page, kind of tucked under your bed or in drawers, and then you don't end up finishing them, and it's a bit of a tricky thing. So I think even if they're a bit rubbish at first, don't worry, you can go back and you can make it better afterwards, but just get into the habit of finishing them. So those would be my main tips.
That's great advice. So these are kind of linked questions. Sophie has asked if you're writing any more books, and Gavin has asked, what can you tell us about Midnight Magic? And Gavin, it's Gavin who's put, so lots of the younger people watching are putting their ages with their questions, which is great. And Gavin has also put his age. So Gavin, age 28, would like to know what you can tell us about Midnight Magic.
Okay, so yeah, I am writing more books. I'm, as I said earlier, I'm on chapter 4 of A Tangle of Spells, which is the third Withershins book, and I've just finished book 3 of the third Midnight Magic book, which is my new magical cat series for 5 to 8 year olds. So yeah, there are 3 books in that series. I don't know how many there would be. I would quite like to do 9 though, because it's about a cat, and you've got the Cat 9 Lives Association. So Midnight Magic is about a little black kitten. I'm quite obsessed with black cats, and she is born at midnight, which gives her magical powers, and because of this, her mum, the mum cat, abandons her at the start because she knows that it's going to lead to trouble. So she kind of takes off with Midnight's brother and sister, and they leave her alone in this barn with this old broomstick. And at first, Midnight's magic kind of goes a bit haywire, and she's got all this smoke kind of coming out of her whiskers and enchanting things around her. And one of the things that it enchants is this broomstick, and that kind of becomes her sidekick called Twiggy. And so after that, she and Twiggy go off, not really knowing what they're, where they're going or what they're doing, but just knowing they've got to keep moving and find somewhere to be and belong. And then they find this little girl called Trixie. So it's kind of what happens when Midnight and Trixie meet, and Trixie's quite up for a bit of magic and mischief, but I'm not sure how her dad and her nan will feel about that. So that's what the first book is all about.
It sounds wonderful. And also it was interesting when you talk about, because I loved the Gobelino books when I was little, and It's I'm all in for a sort of new magical black cat for sure.
I made a bit of a rod for my back though, because I wrote it in verse. I was I've got this really lovely Mary Poppins book, which is it's quite recent, and it's a really lovely paper cut book with lots of gorgeous laser cuts and interesting illustrations, and it's all written in verse. And it'd be a really nice idea to write a book in verse. And even though they're about 2,000 words or 2,500 words long, they take absolutely ages because of the rhyming. So yeah, I've cut out.
But that's even more exciting though. Anna, who is 9, would like to know if you could ever imagine writing a book without magic.
Yeah, I think I could, because I read lots of books about magic. I like lots of adult thrillers and things. So I think if I did write a book without magic, it would probably be something like a thriller for teenagers or adults. But I think that the thing is about when you write a book, publishers tend to like you to carry on writing the same sort of thing. So at the moment, my book future is kind of mapped out in magic. But yeah, I reckon it might happen one day. A non-magical book, that would be quite interesting.
Yeah. I'm aware that we're running out of time. I'm just trying to make sure I ask at least one question from everyone. So Lizzie, I think this is a different Lizzie who's 10, not Vermont Lizzie, would like to know if you always know what your characters are going to look like and whether you draw them.
No, I don't draw them. I've usually got a rough idea of what they look like, but it's the best way I can describe it is that it's like, you know, when you have a dream and you know it's a person in your dream, so you think, oh, I know, I dreamed about my mum last night, or I dreamed about my sister, but I didn't actually see her face, but I just knew it was her. So it's like maybe they've got one characteristic, or you can kind of just see them on the edge of your vision and it's a bit hazy. So I know bits about them, but I don't imagine them too fully. But I think it's like that with a lot of characters that I read, even in other books. But I think it's just the feel of them which is more important, if that makes sense. So I'll describe them to an extent, but I don't describe every single thing, because I think that everyone sees characters differently, and that's one of the lovely things about reading.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, I'm just going to rush through as many as I can. So Maddie would like to know, which is your favourite book of yours that you've written?
Probably A Pinch of Magic.
Yeah.
It's usually one of the recent ones that my head's still sort of quite into.
Yeah. Maya would like to know, what was your favourite book as a child? Maya, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong.
I used to love the Enid Blyton famous 5 books. They were probably what made me a reader, and The Witches by Roald Dahl, because it was really scary. I remember reading it for the first time and not wanting to turn the page because it was scaring me too much. Yeah, those are probably my favourite books as a kid.
Great. Right, I think we're out of time for questions. I think I've asked one from everyone who's asking one, although I'm sorry if I haven't got to, if you've asked more than one question, sorry, we've run out of time to ask more than one. Right, we're going to finish as we usually do with a bookshop recommendation and a writing prompt. So firstly, Michelle, what bookshop would you like to kind of give a shout out to?
Okay, so I'm going to give there's 2 bookshops. So the first one is Waterstones in Stafford, where I used to work as a children's bookseller, and they're really supportive. They're a lovely shop anyway. They're really helpful, and they've got really good staff. And also the lovely Chicken and Frog in Brentwood, Essex, which obviously Essex being my home county, and Natasha and Jim who work there are absolutely brilliant, and they do lots of extra stuff as well, like tuition and lots of different things for people to get involved with. So they're a really lovely indie children's bookshop.
Fab. And then to finish off, I am sure that you have been inspired by listening to Michelle talk about her books. I certainly have. So Michelle has got a kind of writing prompt for you if you'd like to do some of your own writing this afternoon.
Okay, so it's probably no surprise that it's linked to magical objects. So in Pinch of Magic, the sisters have a set of magical Russian dolls that can turn them or other people. So what I would encourage you to do is, now that we're all stuck indoors, have a look around your home and find at least, it can be more, but at least 3 objects that interest you. So it could be, oh, I don't know if you heard that, there's cats fighting outside the door. It could be something, well, it could be something mundane like a toothbrush, or it could be something that's a little bit magical. I'll just show you like a little jeweled frog that opens up and you can hide things away in it, or even jewellery, so you might recognise that from 13 Treasures, or something like a music box. And then once you've got your objects, make a list, like a little spidergram, going out from each object of magical powers that they could have. So for instance, a music box, there's a little clown dancing inside. Maybe it could trap somebody inside it, a bit like Esker from Sky Song, things like that, a key that can unlock any door. So make a list of all the things that your object could do. Then I want you to think about how your character might find this object. Was it found in the attic while your family was clearing out the attic during lockdown, or was it dug up in the garden when you were planting a time capsule for other people to find? Was it given to you as a lockdown birthday gift? And finally, think about what could happen if this magical object ended up in the wrong hands. So what could go wrong? What's the worst that could happen? And hopefully, after you've answered some of those questions, you will have the beginnings of a story.
Amazing. As I said, we gently, the sound went slightly fuzzy for only a few seconds in the middle of that, but I'm just for everyone watching, if you missed it, I'll put the whole writing in the description box from the video. We got almost all of it, but just if you want to listen to it back or read it, if you didn't quite catch the sound, I'll pop it all in the description box so you can have a go at that. Great. So that is all that we have time for. I'll be back next week on Monday with Ross Montgomery, on Wednesday with Thomas Taylor, and on Friday with Jasbinder Bilan. So please do come and join me next week. Thank you to everyone watching. We had some particularly brilliant questions today, but of course the biggest thank you of all is to Michelle. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you for asking me. It's a pleasure. And thank you for your questions. I enjoyed that.
We're obviously having slight issues. We're having slight sound issues, but I will put, as usual, in the description box, like all the information about things we've talked about, all the links to bookshops where you can find out more about Michelle and her books. I hope that you all have a lovely, lovely weekend, and I will see you next week. Bye.